Hello everyone, my name is Elena ARCELAY and I work in the medical department of ROS Spain. And it's my pleasure to present today, on behalf of my colleagues, the results of this study. The name of the presentation is Awareness of Diagnosis from the Perspective of People Living with Early Stages of Alzheimer's Disease. Here you can see the disclosures. So maintaining autonomy and quality of life based on persons' preferences and belief is essential in Alzheimer's disease. However, the subjective experience of living with Alzheimer's disease, mainly in the early stages, has scarcely been explored. The aim of this study was to assess the awareness of the diagnosis among people with early stages of Alzheimer's disease and the impact of this awareness of diagnosis has on different psychological and functional dimensions. We did a non-interventional cross-sectional study in 21 hospitals in Spain. The name of the study was ALFQOL. And the eligibility criteria to be part of this study were age between 50 and 80 years old, diagnosis of prodromal or mild AD according to the NIA criteria, mini mental state examination score of 22 or above, clinical dementia rating global score of 0.5 or 1. This study was approved by the Investigational Review Board of Hospital de Santa Creu i Sant Pau in Barcelona, and written informed consent was obtained from all the participants. So what were the main objectives of this study? We had two. First, to measure the quality of life using 13-item quality of life Alzheimer's disease scale. And the second one, measure the satisfaction of life using the 5-item satisfaction of life scale. There were also some secondary outcomes, some secondary objectives that we want to measure, which were function, mood, feelings of hopelessness, perception of stigma, understanding the condition and its consequences, self-efficacy, and the estimation of subjective perception of dementia using the representations and adjustment to dementia index. The name of this scale was RADIX. We will see it later on. So what was the profile of the participants of this study? 149 participants took part in this study, and the mean age was 72.3. Half of them were female. Most of them, 84%, were married. They had 13 years of education as a mean. Most of them were also retired at 79%. And the time since diagnosis was 1.4 years. The mini-mental score mean was 24.6. And the score for the CDR was 0.5 in 87% of the participants and 1 for 12% of the participants. And here are the results for the quality of life. Let me tell you that this questionnaire has a range from 13 to 52. The higher points indicate better quality of life. And the mean of the results from the responses from the participant was 38. We found out that memory was the domain with the highest negative impact, followed by mood and whole self as a whole. We did also some correlations between the quality of life and other outcomes, as you can see in this table. And what we found out is that stigma, depression, hopelessness, and pessimistic beliefs correlate to lower quality of life. As I mentioned before, we wanted to learn more about the subjective perception of dementia. For that, we use this RADIX scale, which assesses the dementia representation. What is dementia representation? What does that mean? This reflects what a person understands of dementia. And these dementia representations have 5 components. First, the term the person used to describe their condition, and also what person believes about the cause, the time, the possibilities for cure and control, and also the consequences that their condition have. Here you can find the questions in the left side of the slide, and the possible responses are in the middle. As you can see, For identity and for diagnostic identity, these were open questions that participants could answer anything that came to their mind. For cause and timelines, there were multiple choices, so they could choose whatever they thought would be better for what they were feeling. According to the responses that to the questions we have just seen, the participants were classified as those that were aware of their diagnosis. So were those that used a diagnostic term or descriptive term to refer to their diagnosis of their illness. Awareness of Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. This was defined when participants specifically used the word Alzheimer. And for those that use the word Alzheimer and also consider that their condition was going to worsen, we consider this as high awareness group. Here are the results from the RADIX. So for identity, 34% of the participants responded that had memory problems, 23.3% responded that had Alzheimer's disease. For diagnosis identity, 45% responded that had Alzheimer's disease, 15 of them said didn't know, and 15 of them said had memory problems. For the cause, the responses that the participants gave were that 22.7% didn't know the cause of the illness, and 21.4% said it was related to aging. 20.7% thought that it had to do to brain changes. And related to evolution, almost half of them thought that it was going to get worse. So here we can see the results of the correlations we made of the responses that participants gave to RADIX and the rest of the scales. So we separate them in for those that were aware of their Alzheimer's disease diagnosis and those that were not aware of their diagnosis. And what we found is that persons who used the term Alzheimer's disease were younger, had more depressive symptoms, and had poor life satisfaction and quality of life, comparing to those that were not aware of their diagnosis. You can see here in blue what is statistically significant. So the conclusions of this study is what we have just seen, that people aware of their diagnosis using the term Alzheimer were younger, had more depressive symptoms, had poor life satisfaction and quality of life, compared to those without awareness of their specific diagnosis. Awareness of diagnosis is a common phenomenon in people with early Alzheimer's disease and has a negative impact in their well-being and quality of life. Therefore, identifying and understanding the person's representations of Alzheimer's from the onset of the disease may be essential and important for early implementations of individualized interventions to enable well-being and maintenance of the independence where possible. The authors would like to acknowledge all the participants and their families for making the ALCOOL study possible. Thank you very much for your attention.